Let's stay in the common market.
40 years ago, the choice was whether we should stay in or get out of what was called the common market. The referendum campaign was a tragi-comic tale that yoked together the strangest of bedfellows.
Whether Britain stays in the common market or not depends greatly on what the 21 members of the Labour cabinet understand by the term renegotiation.
The Labour Prime Minister, Oxford-educated Harold Wilson, faced with an increasingly Eurosceptic party, had come up with the idea of renegotiations followed by an in-out referendum as a device for holding his party together. The cabinet was deeply divided. Roy Jenkins led the majority of centrist pro-market ministers, while the 7 left-wingers who wanted out were led by Barbara Castle and Tony Benn. Wilson now made the unprecedented decision to allow his ministers to campaign publicly against each other.
On the day the decision was taken by the cabinet, the so-called dissenting ministers got together and launched the No campaign immediately. And Wilson really was very, very angry with us. But still, we took that position and we did have that right to do it.
But behind the scenes, the Labour Europhiles had for months been secretly organising for the referendum campaign with the help of the businessman who was to become treasurer of the Conservative Party. The Yes campaign was launched by the Labour Home Secretary Roy Jenkins, who shared the platform with fellow big cheeses from the Tory and Liberal parties. Jenkins repeated his pledge to resign from the government if the people voted to come out of Europe.
Yes, I stand by that statement which I made. I made it because I do not, on the whole, I do not believe it's good for British politics that people should stay in the government and carry out policies which they believe to be profoundly mistaken.
The campaign to get Britain out of the common market was led by the Industry Secretary Tony Benn, the public school educated man of the people who'd first come up with the idea of the referendum.
I cannot believe that we shall not win on Independence Day a huge vote.
As the opinion polls start to turn against the anti-marketeers, Tony Benn decides to up the ante. He uses his authority as industry minister to make a headline-grabbing claim about the effects of our membership on the economy.
Is 500,000 jobs lost and a huge increase in food prices at a stroke caused by the common market.
Esther McAlpine was working for the newly elected Conservative leader Margaret Thatcher, who'd beaten Ted Heath, the man who'd taken us into Europe. As the Conservatives for Europe launched their campaign, the old and new leader appeared together in public for the first time.
Naturally, it's with some temerity that the pupil speaks before the master, because you know more about it than any of the rest of us.
Margaret Thatcher's view about Britain's place in Europe then could be summed up in 3 words. Yes, yes, yes.
I think it's absolutely vital that everyone should turn out in this referendum and vote yes, so that the question is over once and for all. We are really in Europe and ready to go ahead.
Passionately opposed to Margaret Thatcher over Europe was the Labour firebrand Barbara Castle, who'd long been tipped to become Britain's first woman Prime Minister. As the campaign neared its climax with a debate at the Oxford Union, Mrs Castle was up against 2 of the most senior Europhiles, Ted Heath and the Liberal leader, Jeremy Thorpe.
They lured us into the market with the mirage of the market miracle.
Holding these views as passionately and sincerely as she does, may we assume that if the vote is yes, she would not stay on to administer those policies as a minister?
If the vote goes yes, my country will need me to save it.
Jump operator! Come on, we want to jump operator!
On the eve of the referendum, Mrs T's jumper featured the flags of the 9 common market countries.
They're tall, the girls these days. They're all taller now. You're not too worried. I like this torch.
She was lighting a torch for peace in Europe, with the Yes campaign claiming that after 2 world wars, only a unified Europe with Britain a member could prevent further wars. The votes were counted in vast arenas in 67 regions of the UK.
And it's beginning to look as if we may not have a single no counting area in Britain itself.
On a high turnout, the people voted by 2 to 1 for Britain to stay in the common market.
Area so far